First of all, I would like to make some introduction to this topic, because why actually speaking about investing on this event? I know that DevGAMM have a first conference in Poland, so I know that the audience is from many countries, and I would like to say that first of all, Warsaw Stock Exchange is the first stock exchange in the world in terms of number gaming companies. Yes, 2 years ago we ranked on the first position before Japanese and Korean stock exchange. The second, the gaming is a unique sector in Polish economy and capital market, because generally now in Poland it's operated roughly 500 game dev studios, and 50% of this is quoted on stock exchange, on the main market and the alternative market. And the third specific thing on our market is the share of retail investors. Maybe no, but I would like to say you that 30% of turnover on our capital market is coming from retail investors. So, like me, like Piotr, like Łukasz, Krzysztof, and maybe other people in the hall. So the topic of subtopic of our panel is investing in gaming in Poland from heaven to hell. Why heaven while hell? Because a couple of years ago we have a really bullish market on capital market in gaming sector, but in the last years situation was changed. But I want to at the beginning ask our panelists, in your opinion, very briefly, please rank from 1 to 10. Where are you now? It's near heaven or hell?
All right, let me start. Thank you for a warm welcome. Yesterday I had a great discussion with our journalist on the fact that he told me that, well, your business is in heaven because there is lack of capital in the market. Of course, I cannot agree with him. We will discuss it later, probably. But I think we are in the middle, probably. So let's give 5 to our market. It's not so bad. It's difficult to raise money. But I think that if you have a great company with great story, proven track record, it's possible to get smart money, not the hyped one.
Okay. Łukasz?
So first of all, thanks very much for invitation to this panel. Regarding your question, Andrzej, if we were to put a scale from 1 to 10, so 1 is, let's say, hell, 10 is heaven, I would go with 3. Well, obviously we need to factor in the fact that at the moment we have high interest rates. And this is one of the main factors influencing the behavior of the capital market. It influences the influx of the money or the outflow. So if we have high interest rates, as now, investors prefer, factor in that these high interest rates in valuations, and from their point of view, any investments is simply relatively, valuable less, and wants to keep money in safer investments. That's why gaming sector, which is, let's say, project that may bring some inflows in the future, we don't know what future, is valued, let's say, low. So bearing that in mind, and also, let's say, some, I would call it bad apples that happened in the last few years, there is some sort of negative sentiment towards the market. But I see that it's in my opinion, everything that could happen that was bad happened, and there is a lot of room for improvement.
Okay. Not maybe.
Hello to all of you. So we got 5 and we got 3, and I guess I'm going to place myself between those. And my perspective is more like a capital market perspective, as I'm running the equity crowdfunding campaign. You mentioned that 2 years ago, it was 3 years ago, Polish stock market became the largest one in case of the number of gaming companies listed. Last year, 2 years ago, we had the biggest, I guess, IPO in Europe concerning mobile gaming, right? 20,000 investors in that IPO took part. What happened then? Last year, I guess every IPO that happened on the Polish stock exchange was a disaster, I would say. Many companies even from the companies which took place, made a campaign on our platform, they were preparing themselves for the IPO, for the debut, but almost all of them was doing everything not to just be listed during the last year. That wasn't the time, right? But still, it wasn't the time for the whole capital market. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Please continue.
So right now, I guess we are more like getting like a phoenix from ashes, and everything is coming back on the right track record. But I guess this half of the year will not be good for IPOs still. But I hope the second part of the year would be better. So I see some potential, but still in the second part of the year. Yep.
So how you rank from 1 to?
4.
4. Okay. So some explanation for audience, because Polish people is rarely very pessimistic. So this rank is a good result. Okay.
I have an out-of-the-box idea. May I ask the question for our audience?
Okay.
All right. So please raise your hand if you are stock investors looking for investment into game dev. All right. And the next question, please raise your hand if you are game dev company looking for funding. Well, no one raised their hand. But the idea was, I think that there is lack of capital from stock investors, and there is a lot of companies looking for money. And this is where we are right now.
Yeah. So if we know where we are, so please go to the discuss about profile of Polish investors, of knowledge of Polish investors about gaming. Actually, we have during the last 10, 12 years, we have come long way from very big lack of knowledge to unreasonable fascination in sector. But how we look now? I can tell that I remember some meetings in 2010 when we tried to arrange meeting with board of CD Projekt. And in this time, many of investors, financial investors, are joking that is it business at all? They don't want to meet, but it's very hard moment. What's now, in your opinion? Where is the knowledge of Polish investors about gaming?
Who would like to start?
Yes, you.
Well, from my point of view, I think I have very limited knowledge and experience to properly assess investors' knowledge change over the year. But what I can share with you is some points my customers are struggling with. So one of a great company with very nice growth of revenues, with robust net profit and a great plan for the future are struggling with understanding their business model by investors, private investors. And I think that they are spending a lot of time trying to educate the market about game dev, because there is a lot of rumors and a lot of very bad things happen in the future related to, even right now, some conflicts between companies in a big group, something like that. And as always, it's easy to take one news and then assess the market based on that article, that information. So I think that there is a lot of bad publicity around game dev right now, and a lot of investors are in that, and this is the problem, because I think there is also very nice institutional investors which I think really understand game dev and different business model amongst game dev companies. But I think that regular, let's say, sorry for that, common investors are not familiar with game dev business model, despite the fact that we spent 10 years and it was a very hype in a few years ago.
Okay. Piotr, what's your experience?
Well, my perception of individual investor is a person who actually learned something. I would say, on the stock market, we got trends. So, the gaming was very popular, was popular, starting from 2015, I would say. And at that time, investors saw that it is possible to earn money on that. But the issue is, still, as investors are learning stuff, but sometimes the issue is how do they seek for the knowledge? They learn that you can earn money from investing in the companies, in the tech companies. They understand that gaming studios, as they publish their game, they got an access to the global market at once. Focusing on the Polish investors, they still understand that studios are earning money in currencies, and still they have production costs in Polish zloty. So this is another factor why they are seeking the profit on the investment. But still, those investors are seeing information about successes. They don't see much about failures. So they very often are looking for a huge profit, but still don't understand the risk, which is with that. And what is more, they are seeking for the knowledge from, for example, Facebook groups or stuff like that. So the investor, or Discord, exactly. So the question was, what the investors, are they educated? Where they are in some way, but in some way they got the bad knowledge, I would say. And the result of that is that right now many investors are harmed by the losses, and it's hard to get them back on the market. And that's why we don't see the capital on the market from individual investors. I mean, the whole market is another thing. Like there is no capital in the whole market, but in the gaming industry, that's the issue. That the investors felt loss, they earned that. I guess in 1 year or 2 years, it's gonna come back. Like all investors wish to buy gaming companies. And they're gonna be behaving like lemmings, saying, "Oh, everybody is buying, I need to buy as well."
Łukasz, what's your opinion?
So I can share you my experience. I cannot tell much about years 2000, but I can tell a little bit more about years 2016 onwards. Because at that time I worked in investment banking and the brokerage house. So we did quite a few transactions for gaming companies. We did capital raisings. So the first capital raisings were pre-IPOs. So what does it mean? You go to wealthy individuals and ask for the money. And these people were like in their 50s, 60s that used to invest in bricks to mortar projects, real estate businesses. So for them, being approached with a gaming business, mobile gaming business that was a mobile company, was a huge shock. But we managed to convince them based on the multiples that could be achieved, at which the company, if it goes public, could be sold. So on that, we sold the project. The project was very successful. And from that moment, I noticed that investors in general, their understanding of the business grew dramatically. So they now understand, first of all, how to read financial statements of gaming companies. And it's not an obvious thing, because you sell something that is intangible, and you spend money on developers. And there are many different ways how to show it in financial statements. So you need to know how to read that and what conclusions you can draw, whether the company is making money or not. But investors, I noticed, got grasp of it. And I mean, taking from there, I mean, investors started to factor in many other things like Steam wish list, obviously, then Reddit subscriptions to particular projects the company was involved in. What else?
Generally, I see that.
Sensor tower rankings. Also, job adverts that a company was posting. So investors were drawing conclusions what the project is about, what is the scale of the project. So I mean, I saw a great evolution from people who were struggling to understand in general the business, going into very detailed. Yeah, maybe sometimes too much of a detail.
Generally, you said a lot about sources of information for investors, and I guess that gaming is a unique sector in this term, because I don't know any sectors which have a lot of signals and indicators. Generally, in gaming, we can see in real regime sales, feedback for clients, users, gamer, reaction for this feedback, reviews. It's a lot of information, and many of investors could be confused. What are your hints to make a reasonable analysis of company? Krzysztof, what's your experience?
Well, I think it's a very complex topic, and we can spend 2 hours discussing.
So maybe 3 hints.
Yeah, so just a few thoughts. First of all, I know that all in a business is data-driven, and access to data is critically important to make any kind of decisions. I think there are 2 signals, to sell or to buy. So the first question is, are you a buying company or selling? Because I think signals and data for buying company is quite different than for selling. And I would like to start with some disclaimer, because I really believe in long-term investing. I'm okay, and I know that you can invest in a short period of time, and it probably makes sense and a profit, of course. But I think if you take a decision whether to buy this particular company or not, it's better to assess mainly fundamentals factors. and like general plan, strategy, team, historical track record, financing structure, for example, and business model, of course, because you can buy self-publisher, co-publisher, you can buy work-for-hire company, and you can buy a mix, hybrid of those. So I think this is important when we take decision. I also can say from my professional experience that I see many data, and I have access to confident information. And I can say that if you are taking decision based on publicly available data, like, I don't know, some wish list, likes on Facebook or Twitter, something like that, it might be not worth it, because in many cases I saw many great games with absolutely no, with low wish list. Of course, it's easier to get high sale when your wish list is great. But again, I do not recommend to work on live data, because you have only 2 or 3%, and based on 2 or 3% of the whole picture, you can take wrong decisions. So if you are a long-term investor, I think it's better to work on fundamental side. If you are looking for short-term investment, yes, it might be worth it. However, please remember that all short-term investors are working on the same numbers as you see, because they are public. So if you are not, if you don't have access to confidential information, you may take wrong conclusions. And that's my point, because again, I saw many things in game dev, because we analyze a lot of companies, and we have really access and to the performance of their games. And even if we build our own scoring model, of course based on many kind of data like wish list and so on and so forth, I see that we still need a lot more data to make sure that our model is working properly. We are building it, so it takes time, but we need to have confidential data for sure.
Thank you. You said about wish list, and we can see in a few years ago that many of non-public companies create a high role of this indicator of wish list. And Łukasz, what's your point of view for analyzing of wish list?
So wishlist is one of many factors to consider. Obviously, it's good to have one rather than not. So if I were to isolate this indicator, I would be interested in the behavior of wishlists. So the dynamics, especially before or after a very specific milestone, let's say early access, a release, or full release. Obviously, gaming studios may boast that they have a very high wish list, but at the same time, they may be working on a game for a long time, and the wish list may be, let's call it, stale, and then the conversion may be actually pretty low. So, as I said, having a high wish list is good, but good investor should also factor in these factors, but also the more fundamental ones that Krzysztof mentioned. Yeah.
If I may something to add, because your point is great. Please also remember that this is very important, how much the company is paying for acquisition of one potential buyer to the wish list. It's not so simple. And if the cost is high, it will definitely lower future returns. And I think it's very important to remember that if the wish list is based on marketing spendings. You need to know the cost of acquisition of one potential buyer. And if you don't know that cost, it doesn't make sense to analyze wishlist.
Okay. Piotr, generally you are cooperating with non-public companies which want to raise capital on equity crowdfunding platform. So what's the main task when you are starting to analyzing company and starting to decide cooperate or not with this?
So at first I need to, I am agreeing with Krzysztof and Łukasz about the wish list, that individual, I mean, we know that this indicator is not the best one, or it's not the only one to focus on. But many individual investors, they believe in that factor as they are believing that good wish list is pretty high potential for a success. From my perspective, the main issue is the quality. The quality, starting from the quality of the team, what they did before, what games they were working on. Another one is the quality of the shareholders. I mean, sometimes we had a lot of companies that they had a main shareholder, which was like a bigger gaming company. Okay. Some of them was already listed on the stock market. Or they have a partner with they have partnered with VC, so they had somebody who was analyzing something, not only what's seeing like the wish list or the financial data, which is actually the history. It's hard to predict on that. Okay. So every aspect of the company, we are looking at the quality of it.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so we know investor profile. We know briefly how analyzes companies. So maybe we talk about current situation for companies and opportunities in area of financing. Generally, gaming sector talking about financing by equity financing, but we have a good thing that debt appear on the gaming market.
Yes, it is.
It was a science fiction a few years ago. Krzysztof, could you approach us with this topic?
Yes, of course. I love to do that. So yes, debt appear to the market. We are lending money. I think we really cracked the code, and we find 5 products which can be used to, for example, boost marketing spendings or finish game, scale, promote it for many goals. It is possible to finance game dev by debt, but of course this product is limited to top performing companies. It's not available. If you are looking for finance your first game, you should focus on maybe crowdfunding or private investors, friends and family. We are available only for the best. So if you see that we support some companies, you can make sure that we will do our work properly, and these companies are quite good. But that is possible because in the last few years we saw revenue-based financing in e-commerce sector. It means that the debt is repaid directly for future revenues. There is a lot of great companies which have nice performing portfolio of old games with recurring monthly revenues. So taking this into account with many other factors in our model, we are able to provide them with a very flexible solution when the repayment is in the future. So yeah, I think it's very good for companies, because I don't believe that if you have, for example, a great game and it's finished or it's nearly to finish, I think this is not a good idea to take money from private investors to invest into the marketing. It's better to take a loan, then repay this loan from future revenues after the game release. And it's also healthy for your balance because, again, building value is always having a good ratio of equity to debt. So I'm very happy that we can support many great companies by lending money. And I think it's very disruptive, it's very new, fresh idea, and I hope we will be serving companies by this disruptive financing.
So we are very happy that we can welcome debt on our gaming scene. Equity crowdfunding is, I can say, teenager. if we say about terms of years in gaming ecosystem. So 3 years ago, we have a very bullish market on equity crowdfunding. But what situation is now, Piotr?
First of all, I haven't heard about debt financing before today, so that is quite surprising. Coming back to the equity crowdfunding. Well, equity crowdfunding is extremely related to the whole situation of the stock market. So if we got a bear market on the capital market, is the same here. As it's gonna go up, still the crowdfunding gonna be the second part of that. I guess at the very beginning, investors would be more likely to invest in big companies than in small studios,
Okay.
which mostly use crowdfunding for funding. What I'm seeing right now, what is quite surprising to me, I see more financing of the certain projects, certain games than before, and I see an increase in an interest in that, which is surprising because at this time, well, investing in equity into the studio is, let's say, still risky, but it's more secure than investing in the one IP, right?
Yeah.
Because you got a studio which is trying to make a couple of games. And from my point of view, it's supposed to be like investors who should be choosing to invest in equity than financing the one IP. But right now, I'm seeing that more are interested in financing IP than putting money in equity. I guess the issue can be that many investors have losses on their investments. Like if they were investing like 5-6 years ago, they went out of the market at the right time, they probably get profit. But some of them were investing like 4 years ago, and we got the bear market, and they felt loss.
Yeah.
That's why they might be seeing equity investing as risky, but seeing the IP investment as something new with a potential, which is, from my perspective, not right. But still, it happens.
Okay. Please remark that many companies which raise capital on non-public market still don't enter stock exchange. So I wait for this time when many of these companies from equity crowdfunding going to be public.
Well, as I said, some companies from our platform, their IPOs were planned for the last year, but they were doing everything just not to get listed during that time in the market.
Yeah.
And I guess, most of them gonna be get listed this year. But as I said, it would be safer to be listed, but during the second half of this year.
Okay.
If nothing happens around on the market, right?
Yeah, definitely. Łukasz, you have a lot of experience in brokerage house on the capital market. Could you approach us with current situation on stock exchange in terms of gaming sector?
So I think one, let's say, current event speaks a lot for itself. because currently one of the bigger companies that is public is seeking capital. It's PCF Group, so people can fly. That company did an IPO, I believe it was end of 2020. Very successful, by the way, oversubscribed like crazy. And now it's not going for the money in the public, but is raising a private round. I believe they're looking for, I believe, if I remember right, 300 million zlotys. And they're going private. They're looking for, from private sources, institutional investors. So it speaks a lot for itself, yeah? That now it's not the time to look, to go public, to go to let's say, private individuals' money and do heavy PR, IR campaigns. It's just you know, sticking to the specialized entities who can provide that capital. And unless we have, that's my view, unless we have more bullish market, lower interest rates, and some more, let's say, positive atmosphere, some successes, because for this year, I'm not sure if we're going to have big releases, maybe next year or in 2 years' time. So that will be jointly stimulus for looking for the capital on public markets.
Okay, so it's a rather sweet, bitter picture at all. And so I want to be so pessimistic, but is it possible in general to return to heaven in gaming sector, in financing of gaming sector? What should be happen? The changing of situation on capital market, or maybe a couple of successful release? What do you think, Krzysztof?
It depends on your heaven definition, because if heaven is high valuation, or right, we need a lot of hype. We need some great news, great events, like a very successful game release or something like that. From my point of view, heaven is stable and robust return of game dev companies. This is the heaven, because evaluation is one thing. But from my point of view, I see game dev as a very peaceful place right now to invest. In this case, that there is a lot of good companies to consider to invest, which has nice net profit. Yeah, well planned for this year and the next maybe few ones. And I think that, again, heaven means great financial results. Valuation is multiple. And in terms of multiple, I hope to have as much as possible for my clients, for the whole industry. But I think we should focus on fundamentals, we should focus on returns, and I think that from my point of view, it's worth to prove that our business works by giving investors a great results.
Okay, so I don't remember the stable situation on capital market, but we should wait for this. Łukasz, what's your point of view? Maybe something success game, video games of such one of Polish studio could be bring more optimism to the capital market.
I mean, yeah. I mean, every time there is a, let's say, a positive news release, market reacts positively, but shortly after, we're talking about short-term investors, so the valuations, you know, go back to, let's call it, equilibrium. But coming back to the question and the answer Krzysztof gave, I think it all depends on how we define heaven, because like 3-4 years ago, heaven we defined by crazy valuations. I mean, gaming was heaven for everyone because everyone believed in investing in pre-IPO.
I mean, heaven, bullish market, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, so, I mean, going back to fundamentals, focusing for the gaming studios on the business, on the strategy of monetizing, securing funds, and the whole ecosystem, you know, will be sustainable this way. So there will be more good news, more projects, more good projects will be on the market.
Do you see, Piotr, any good project in pipeline, or maybe in competitors' platform?
Well, I guess the industry, the whole gaming industry, from the capital perspective, will have the rise, saying your language, going to heaven. As soon as they're going to be a little bit, the market going to be a bit stabilized, or start rising. And after that, I would say that greed is God. It's going to start like a snowball. But we need a good information, as my colleague said, and good environment to that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes?
Well, I think I have something optimistic for us, for our discussion. So this year is quite great in terms of new public subsidies, public grants, and easy to reach. And if our companies, game dev companies, will do it properly with some strategy, it can really leverage their business. And I think it's important to remember that this year there will be a lot of money from public.
Okay. Thank you for this positive opinion. Łukasz, you want to
I would like to add one more thing, also to add to what Krzysztof said, that I mean, every project must choose its own path. I mean, sometimes you know, going for equity investment might not be the best route, due to the fact that investors might be pushing for exit on the stock exchange or the alternative market. Anyway, that means some information burden for the founders, some additional costs. So there, I mean, if we focus individually just on the capital market, we may draw conclusion that it's not looking that well. However, there are obviously other sources of financing. There are subsidies. There is this. Krzysztof is launching his debt platform, which also is some sort of proof that the information that is available to investors enables them to somehow assess it and mitigate or just decrease the risk to such a level to propose debt, which few years ago was, you know, hard to imagine. So, the prospects at the end of the day look quite optimistic, and with the situation we have and the tools we have, I mean, still gaming studios may do pretty well.
It's very good that Polish people could be optimistic also. Gentlemen, thank you for a very fruitful discussion. Maybe somebody from audience have a questions, because we have 5 minutes time.
Do we have any questions from the audience? Yes?
Okay, thank you. So I have one question, because when I'm thinking about investing in Polish gaming market, many investors told me that why I should invest in that sector when I could invest in oil companies that are really great investors, great examples for investing, or some basic and not so risky companies. So how we could change that thinking in Polish market that investing in gaming market is really risky?
Who wants to start? Well, yes, investing into gaming market is risky for sure. You can try to mitigate this risk by diversifying your portfolio. You can choose, of course, trying to choose right companies, but you can choose different business models. Don't make a bet on one game. Focus on studios which has 3 games to launch in the next 24 months, something like that. So even if the one release will be lower than expected, it's still a lot of good things may happen in the future for these companies in the next release. So of course you can compete with, like you said, oil industry for sure, but I think right now in general stock market is empty, not for game dev, for many other industries. And I think that most investors, considering their investment into, in general, stock exchange, I think they compete with other financial products, like, for example, bond based on inflation, 80% annual revenue, annual rate. So I think oil industry is a nice example, because yes, it's a safe investment. We will always use oil, probably. But I think that we compete with other financial products like bonds, like alternative investment into art or something like that.
I'm going to add something to that comparison to oil company. Oil company, it's not the company which, after having their product, have an access to more than 80% of global market at once, just like that. And still they can sell their products with 30% of margin. So that's the main difference. You are buying chances. Investing in the company which are making games is actually buying chances. That's why you need to focus on quality of the chance, of the quality of the people who are to give you a chance to take an advantage of this market.
Just to add, I mean, I think if there's an investor who is more keen on oil investments, maybe just he should stick to the oil companies, because it's like a completely different risk profile. I mean, I guess they are now quite expensive, oil companies, considering oil prices globally. But I mean, in terms of cash flow, it's like a completely different animal if you compare it to gaming companies. Obviously, excluding, I don't know, electronic art, etc., etc. But we're talking about investments in Polish projects. I mean, it's just a completely different animal, different risk, much higher risk. However, if you do the right assessment and you jump in at the right valuation, I mean, you have completely different returns. But as I said, the risk reward is just completely different.
Thank you very much. Any more questions from the audience? Andrzej, would you like to say a few words?
At the end, I hope that general, because I was born professional on capital market, so I hope that financing by capital market will be still growing, and companies from other region will also see opportunities on Polish market. So I hope that this meeting, this discussion could be the beginning of adventure for somebody. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for the panelists.